16. It is the child. The next afternoon, 3 members of the large family sat in the Indian gentleman's library, doing their best to cheer him up. He was waiting for a certain event very anxiously. This event was the return of Mr. Carmichael from Moscow. "Papa won't be very long now," said Janet. "May we talk about the lost little girl?" "I don't think I could talk much about anything else just now," the Indian gentleman answered with a tired look. "We like her so much," said Nora. "We call her the little unfairy princess." "Why?" the Indian gentleman asked. It was Janet who answered. "It is because, though she is not exactly a fairy, she will be so rich when she is found that she will be like a princess in a fairy tale. We called her the fairy princess at first, but it didn't quite suit." "There's a cab!" exclaimed Janet. "It's stopping before the door. It is Papa." They all ran to the windows to look out. "Yes, it's Papa," Donald proclaimed. "But there is no little girl." All 3 of them ran into the hall. It was in this way they always welcomed their father. Mr. Carmichael's voice approached the door. "No, children," he was saying. "You may come in after I have talked to Mr. Carrisford. Go and play with Ram Dass." Then the door opened and he came in. He looked rosier than ever, and brought an atmosphere of freshness and health with him, but his eyes were disappointed. "What news?" Mr. Carrisford asked. "The child the Russian people adopted?" "She is not the child we are looking for," was Mr. Carmichael's answer. "She is much younger than Captain Crew's little girl. Her name is Emily Carew. I have seen and talked to her." How unhappy the Indian gentleman looked. His hand dropped from Mr. Carmichael's. "Then the search has to be begun over again," he said. "That is all. Please sit down." Mr. Carmichael took a seat. Somehow he had gradually grown fond of this unhappy man. He was himself so well and happy, and so surrounded by cheerfulness and love, that suffering and broken health seemed unbearable things. "Come, come," he said in his cheery voice. "We'll find her yet." "We must begin at once. No time must be lost," Mr. Carrisford said. "Have you any new suggestion to make? Any whatsoever?" Mr. Carmichael rose with an uncertain face. "Well, perhaps," he said. "The fact is, an idea occurred to me as I was thinking the thing over in the train." "What was it?" "We have searched the schools in Paris. Let us give up Paris and begin in London. That was my idea, to search London." "There are schools enough in London," said Mr. Carrisford. "By the way, there is one next door." "Then we will begin there." "No," said Carrisford. "There is a child there who interests me, but she is not a pupil, and she is a little lonely creature, as unlike poor Crew as a child could be." Perhaps the magic was at work again at that very moment, the beautiful magic. What was it that brought Ram Dass into the room with excitement in his dark eyes? "Sahib," he said, "the child herself has come. The child the Sahib felt pity for. She brings back the monkey, who had again run away to her attic under the roof. It was my thought that it would please the Sahib to see and speak with her." "Who is she?" asked Mr. Carmichael. "God knows," Mr. Carrisford answered. "She is the child I spoke of." He addressed Ram Dass. "Yes, I should like to see her. Go and bring her in." Then he turned to Mr. Carmichael. "Ram Dass told me of this child's hard life, and together we invented a romantic plan to help her. I suppose it was a childish thing to do, but it gave me something to plan and think of." Then Sarah came into the room. She carried the monkey in her arms, and he evidently did not intend to part from her. "Your monkey ran away again," she said in her pretty voice. "He came to my window last night, and I took him in because it was so cold. I didn't want to bring him back so late. I know you are ill." The Indian gentleman looked at her with curious interest. "That was very thoughtful of you," he said. Sarah looked towards Ram Dass, who stood near the door. "Shall I give him to the Lascar?" she asked. "How do you know he is a Lascar?" said the Indian gentleman, smiling a little. "Oh, I know Lascars," Sarah said. "I was born in India." "You were born in India?" exclaimed the Indian gentleman. "Were you? You live next door?" "Yes, I live at Miss Minchin's seminary." "But you are not one of her pupils." Sarah hesitated a moment. "I don't think I know exactly what I am," she replied. "Why not?" "At first I was a pupil, but now—" "You were a pupil? What are you now?" "I sleep in the attic, next to the scullery maid," she said. "I run errands for the cook. I do anything she tells me, and I teach the little ones their lessons." "Question her, Carmichael," said Mr. Carrisford in a weak voice. "Question her. I cannot." The big, kind father of the large family knew how to question little girls. "What do you mean by 'at first,' my child?" he inquired. "When I was first taken there by my papa." "Where is your papa?" "He died," said Sarah very quietly. "He lost all his money, and there was none left for me. There was no one to take care of me, or to pay Miss Minchin." "Carmichael!" the Indian gentleman cried out loudly. "Carmichael!" "We must not frighten her," Mr. Carmichael said to him in a quick, low voice. "How did your father lose his money?" the Indian gentleman asked. "He did not lose it himself," Sarah answered, wondering still more each moment. "He had a friend he was very fond of. He was very fond of him. It was his friend who took his money. He trusted his friend too much." "What was your father's name?" the Indian gentleman said. "Tell me." "His name was Ralph Crewe," Sarah answered, feeling worried. "Captain Crewe. He died in India." "Carmichael," the man gasped, "it is the child. The child!" For a moment Sarah thought he was going to die. Ram Dass poured out drops from a bottle and held them to his lips. Sarah stood near, trembling a little. She looked in a bewildered way at Mr. Carmichael. "What child am I?" she asked. "He was your father's friend," Mr. Carmichael answered her. "Don't be frightened. We have been looking for you for 2 years." Sarah put her hand up to her forehead, and her mouth trembled. She spoke as if she were in a dream. "And I was at Miss Minchin's all the while," she half whispered, "just on the other side of the wall."